Oldsmobile Jetfire. Back in 1962, when tailfins were fading but space-age dreams were alive and kicking, Oldsmobile rolled out the Jetfire, a car so ahead of its time it practically needed a user manual just to drive. It was the first production car with a turbocharged V8 engine, cranking out 215 horsepower from a 215 cubic inch aluminum block. The turbo system was paired with something called turbo rocket fluid, a fancy name for a mix of distilled water, methanol, and a corrosion inhibitor. Drivers had to top it off like windshield wiper fluid, or else risk the turbo saying, "No thanks." Despite its groundbreaking engineering, the Jetfire was a little too complicated for most people. If you forgot the magic juice or didn't maintain it just right, it became more trouble than it was worth. By 1963, Oldsmobile quietly pulled the plug, and most Jetfires were retrofitted with conventional carburetors. Only 3,765 Jetfires were sold in 1962, and a further 5,842 were built in its final year of 1963. Chevrolet Corvair Corsa Turbo. The '65 Corvair Corsa Turbo was GM's answer to the question nobody asked, what if we built a Porsche in Ohio? With its air-cooled, rear-mounted flat-six engine and sleek new body, the '65 Corsa looked like it belonged more on the Autobahn than Main Street. The turbocharged version cranked out a lively 180 horsepower, not bad for a car Ralph Nader famously declared unsafe at any speed. The Corsa Turbo was part of the Corvair's second generation, which saw a complete design overhaul. Gone were the quirky compact lines, replaced by something that looked suspiciously like a mini Chevelle that had been to finishing school. It handled surprisingly well, especially for a rear-engine American car in the '60s, and the turbo added just enough kick to keep things spicy. Of course, being a turbocharged car in 1965 meant dealing with a little lag, or a lot, depending on your mood. Boost didn't come on until around 4,000 RPM. Still, it was a marvel for its time, an American sports car that dared to be weird and fun. Only about 7,206 turbocharged Corsas were made that year, and today they're like four-wheeled unicorns at car shows. Opel Manta Turbo. In truth, Opel never officially made a turbocharged Manta in '73, but that didn't stop a few enterprising speed junkies and a handful of aftermarket specialists from doing it themselves. The base Manta A was already a lightweight rear-wheel drive coupe with clean Euro lines and just enough handling chops to keep it fun. But with only about 90 horsepower from its 1.9-liter engine, it was more spirited jog than sprint. Enter the turbo conversions, usually courtesy of UK firms like Broadspeed or mad scientists in garages who thought, what this elegant little coupe really needs is a turbocharger and a reason to scare its owner. The result? A sleeper with surprising bite. With a modest boost setup, the Manta Turbo could push closer to 160 horsepower, which in a car weighing just 2,200 pounds felt like strapping a bottle rocket to a skateboard. These conversions were rare and not exactly factory-blessed, but they gave the Manta a cult following among enthusiasts who liked their classics with a little extra chaos. Chrysler Conquest TSI. The TSI was the kind of car that made you do a double take at the badge. Chrysler? Really? Because under the hood, and just about everywhere else, this was actually a rebadged Mitsubishi Starion, imported from Japan and given a Stars and Stripes makeover for American showrooms. It was Chrysler's attempt to join the turbocharged, fuel-injected, rear-wheel drive cool kids club of the '80s, and the Conquest TSI didn't just show up. It strutted in with pop-up headlights, flared fenders, and a serious attitude. With a 2.6-liter turbocharged four-cylinder putting out 176 horsepower, it was quick for the time and had that turbo whoosh that made every on-ramp feel like a qualifying lap. Still, it wasn't perfect. The big turbo made for noticeable lag, and that 2.6-liter engine had a reputation for being a bit temperamental if you weren't kind to it. But when it worked, it worked. Ford Thunderbird Turbo Coupe. By '88, the Turbo Coupe had matured into a serious player, with a sleek, aerodynamic body that made it look more Miami Vice than Midwestern driveway. Under the hood, it packed a 2.3-liter turbocharged inline-4, good for 190 horsepower and 240 torque when paired with the 5-speed manual, a combo that made it surprisingly quick, especially for a car that looked like it should come with a Phil Collins cassette. It had an automatic boost control system that dialed down the turbo pressure if you opted for the automatic transmission, which, let's be honest, was the car's way of politely saying, you should have gotten the stick. While most of its Mustang cousins were busy flexing V8 muscles, the Thunderbird Turbo Coupe was showing that a Turbo 4 could bring some finesse to the party. It was the thinking person's performance car, a little quirky, definitely underrated, and quietly impressive. After '88, Ford swapped the Turbo 4 for a V6 and a softer vibe, ending the Turbo Coupe era. Mazda Unos Cosmo 20B. Sold only in Japan under the upscale Unos brand, the Cosmo 20B was the first and only production car to feature a 3-rotor rotary engine with twin sequential turbochargers, a setup that sounded like science fiction back when most cars were still figuring out fuel injection. The 20B engine cranked out a silky 280 horsepower and delivered it with a smooth, high-revving punch that made even seasoned gearheads do a double take. Under the hood, it was complex. Under the skin, it was plush. The Cosmo wasn't just about speed, it was about being fast and fancy. Unfortunately, the Cosmo's complexity, thirsty engine, and exclusive Japanese market release meant it never quite hit the mainstream. Mazda only made about 8,875 of the 20B-powered versions, and they remained a unicorn outside Japan until the 25-year import rule made them fair game. Isuzu Impulse RS Turbo. The RS Turbo was the high-performance, all-wheel drive version of the second-gen Impulse, and it came loaded with rally-ready vibes and a serious dose of turbocharged attitude. Under the hood was a 1.6-liter DOHC inline-4 boosted by a turbo to make 160 horsepower, especially when paired with the RS's full-time AWD and Lotus-tuned suspension. While the car never hit it big on the sales floor, partly due to Isuzu's shaky US brand recognition and the fact that it wasn't a Honda or Toyota, the RS carved out a niche among enthusiasts who appreciated its quirky charm, solid grip, and underdog spirit. Only about 800 were sold in the US and Canada in 1991. Sadly, the Impulse RS was a one-year wonder in the States, gone before most people knew it existed. But those who've driven one know it was special, quick, balanced, and just the right amount of weird. Plymouth Laser RS Turbo. Built as part of the Diamond Star Motors love triangle between Chrysler, Mitsubishi, and Eagle, the Laser shared its DNA with the Mitsubishi Eclipse and Eagle Talon, but with its own badge, pop-up headlights, and a name that sounded like a sci-fi weapon. The RS Turbo was the top trim, and it meant business. A 2-liter DOHC turbocharged engine pumping out up to 195 horsepower, if you picked the AWD version with a manual transmission. That combo turned the Laser RS into a legitimate pocket rocket. Quick, grippy, and more fun than most people expected from a Plymouth. Inside, it had all the 90s trimmings, digital dash, optional leather, and enough hard plastic to remind you of your Walkman. It wasn't flashy, but it could absolutely embarrass bigger, pricier cars if provoked. Sadly, the Laser never really found its audience, and by 1994, Plymouth pulled the plug. Dodge M4S Turbo Interceptor. Built in the early 1980s as a technology demonstrator, basically Chrysler showing off what it could do if money, time, and practicality weren't a thing, the M4S was a sleek, low-slung supercar prototype that looked like it drove straight out of a video game. And then, in 1986, it literally did just that when it starred as the ghostly vengeance machine in the cult film The Wraith, driven by a mysterious, leather-clad Charlie Sheen. Underneath the composite body was a twin-cam, 2.2-liter 4-cylinder engine, turbocharged and intercooled to the tune of 440 horsepower. Yes, 440 horses from a four-banger in the 80s. That gave the M4S a top speed of over 190 miles per hour, numbers that put it right up there with Ferraris and Porsches of the time, though it was never intended for public roads. The car was mid-engined, beautifully aerodynamic, and completely impractical, everything a supercar should be. Only a few were built, and most were stunt or display models. The M4S stands for mid-engine, 4-cylinder, sports. But they might as well have called it WTF, because no one expected Dodge to cook up something this wild.